So there's a holiday coming up. You may have heard of it. It's Halloween. And I wanted to share with you a couple thoughts about it. We are a big Halloween family at our house. We're deeply creepy Halloween people. And I, always loved Halloween, but it strikes me as one of the only times and places in our shared culture where death is actually welcomed. And of course, there's lots of, cool and fun TV and movie costumes and, plenty of sexy firefighters and, whatever else. And that's awesome. And I love it. But you may have noticed in our shared culture that we don't do death. We don't like it. We don't talk about it. All of us will be young and beautiful forever, right? Until we're not. And then we're usually very shocked about it. But this is not unique to our culture. Thousands and thousands of years ago, there was a mythical king named Yudhistira. And Yudhistira was asked a question by his father, and his father was in disguise and wanted to see if his son would be a good ruler, see if his son was competent and wise. And so he asked him, pretending to be a god hidden in a forest glade. He said, "Answer me my questions, What is the greatest and most wondrous mystery in the whole world?" And Yudhistira, the boy who would be king, answered the mysterious voice in the forest. "The greatest mystery, the most wondrous mystery, is that all over the world beings are born, and the only sure thing about them is that they will die. And yet, every one of those beings is convinced that they will live forever. Surely they won't die. Death is for other people. That is the most wondrous and strange mystery in this world." And I loved hearing that story because it's not like people are dumb. It's like, isn't that amazing? And on some level, it's kind of wonderful in a naive sort of way. And certainly the vast majority of our industries function best when we don't think about our own demise. You can't take your car, you can't take your house, you can't take your new kitchen to the grave. You can't take your money or your status or your, these. I can't take these. These make my life a lot easier. I can see you now. But you take nothing with you. You leave it all behind. So even though it would be easy, again, to think that this is something that we do here in the decadent post-industrial West, historically, the Buddha, 2,600 years ago in India, taught his students to contemplate their own mortality every day. And this is kind of a bummer. And a lot of us Buddhists don't necessarily do that a lot. Maybe not every day. And if you have a Buddhist friend who's like super duper morbid all the time, that might be why. They might be like trying to practice that. So first I want to share with you briefly, what time? 10:30, okay. So just briefly, can anyone tell me why it would be a good idea to contemplate, to meet the understanding or the knowledge of your own death? Inevitable and... Wait, I want to hear that.
It's a de-stressor. If I think about my death, then when it happens or when it nears, I'm not going to be upset.
Brilliant. The one answer was, it's a de-stressor. It takes the punch out of it because it's coming. And for many of us, we get a little hint of it as time goes on more and more. If you're very lucky, death will be like slowly reeling you in, taking like a limb here or there, a function here or there, or your eyesight, or your good judgment, or your fashion sense, and then, your hearing, Hold on. I wanted her point was so strong, and then I got Trevor, and then you, and then you. So let me go around the room real quick. So if you're lucky, everything will get taken from you, and then finally, the whole thing. Now, just so nobody gets too freaked out tonight. I just want to remind you all that every single person within the sound of my voice and every single person walking around was essentially dead for countless billions of years already. You all have done it. It's easy. You did it for trillions of years at the dawn of time. You're living this fabulous, amazing, wonderful life. Congratulations. I hope you are making it the best you possibly can, being a blessing to the world and her creatures. And you're just going to go back to what you were doing previously. Being the stars and the moon and the sun and the trees and the wind, just like you were. So it's more like you're going from one room to another. So, and then Trevor, what was yours? Inevitable. Why does it make sense to make friends with the inevitable? Because you have to. There's no fighting reality. The definition of dukkha, according to Ajahn Chah, famous Thai forest monk, he says, if you're walking around looking for a turtle with a mustache, you're going to suffer because turtles don't have mustaches. And that was his quaint northern Thai village way of saying, when you fight with reality, reality wins every time. That's just the way it goes. So don't manufacture your own suffering by fighting again. Make friends with it. Get intimate. Get intimate with your own reactivity against it. Okay, and then you.
I think it makes you live your life and live for today.
It can be a profound,
life every day.
Yes, it can be a profound teacher and be like, hey, guess what? Tomorrow you're not promised. You're not even promised the next 10 minutes. You better live it up now. I tell people all the time, this is what people get at Trader Joe's when they come through my line. They're like, hey, I know I shouldn't eat this, but it's so delicious. I'm like, there's not a lot of key lime pie in the grave. So get it now, like enjoy, dance now. So thank you, great point. Doug.
No, I was just trying to be clever.
You are clever.
Taking things one by one, I just wanted all to happen before the paramedics arrived.
Yes, all of us do. Yeah, like, what is it? In my sleep, after a prime rib and a bottle of wine, just, out the back door. Yes, sir.
Woody Allen said, I don't mind the idea of death, I just don't want to be there when it happens.
Okay. Woody Allen said, I don't mind the idea of death, I just don't want to be there when it happens. I'm telling the Zoom folks. Luckily, you won't be. Death is just happening, but that's a subject for another time. So the Buddha told his students to cultivate this awareness of death. And another slant for these are all brilliant points, by the way, thank you. Another slant for the old man was, the only thing you take with you is what you do in this life. That's the only thing. My actions are my only inheritance from this life. What I do for good, what I do for ill, moments of wakefulness, moments of forgetfulness, that is my legacy. And if I can help one person, if I can be of service for a moment out of this lifetime, King Pasenadi of Koshala asked the Buddha, you and your followers, all you talk about is death, and everything falls apart, and everything's empty, and nothing lasts, there's nothing truly lasts. And the Buddha said, O king, neither fire, nor rain, nor wind, nor birth, nor death can erase a good deed. Your life, a life of kindness, a life of compassion and service to fellow beings, it's so beautiful. I can't imagine a better way to spend this moment of consciousness. So, Halloween can be a great time to eat candy corn. It's one of my favorite things in the world. It can be a great time to make cool playlists for your friends. And it can be a great time to have a party and do all kinds of wonderful things. And maybe if just for a moment you contemplated your own mortality, and if you're young enough, it's probably a little bit easier. When I was very young, I thought I was a super duper spiritual person because they would tell me in temple, oh, death is coming. What does the Buddha say about, wow, Rob. Rob Niche just asked a really interesting question that I don't know. Rob, shoot me an email about that. Rob asks, what does the Buddha say about determining the timing of your own death? And I'm going to say, Rob, I'm not familiar with anything in the suttas about that. Although that's a very common thing in the kind of hagiographies and biographies of spiritual masters, is they can be like, well, it's happening tomorrow. It's something common among people. So when you guys get fully enlightened, let me know. But just in terms of when I was young, I thought I was very spiritual because I wasn't afraid of death. But I was young and my body felt good all the time. And now it doesn't. And now I'm worried. And I look at my darling children and my wonderful wife and you all who I want to serve. And I want to be a good student. And I think of my teachers, some of whom are very elderly men. One of my teachers is a very elderly man with a cancer diagnosis. I have met him once in my life. That might be it. So I just really want to invite you to make friends with this part of life, because life and death are made of the same cloth. It's like the inside and outside of a shirt, right? And I had the good fortune to tell my wife's late father this as he was passing. I said, do you remember when you were the sun and the moon and the stars and the flowers and the trees and the wind? And then you were Tuck Macon for a while, Mr. Tuck Macon. It's time to go be the flowers and the trees and the wind and the sun, the moon, the stars again. And I hope on some level he was able to absorb that. I think he was. So in the specific words of the Buddha, by practicing mindfulness of death, one counteracts our mindless avoidance, aversion, and clinging to our idea of self. This idea of self that hardens our hearts to others as they shift through the unavoidable processes of life, sickness, old age, death. We begin to make friends with a larger conception of ourselves as a part of the natural world, part of the common human family, united in our precious temporary nature, arising like a wave in the ocean, not separate, whole, at home. Quote, uninstructed people subject to illness, aging, and death are disgusted, horrified, and fearful of others and themselves who are subject to the same. It would be a shame to be so fearful of something so inevitable and something that is actually closer to all of us than our very next breath.